This is Siddarth Tiwari, former Chief Representative for Asia and the Pacific at the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, and now Associate Fellow at Chatham House. At a recent World Bank IMF event held by the Atlantic Council, he made the following remark at a panel event on tokenization.
Once it gets tokenized, it'll be super efficient, and you'll look, I have no doubt, you and I will get tokenized in 15 years.
I find the moderator's response quite interesting here. She's a senior fellow at the Council of Foreign Relations who appears almost to balk at his comment, perhaps out of dread or perhaps out of letting too much out of the bag. It's unclear. And so in this video, we'll break down what you will be tokenized means and why the architecture that is under design and testing makes this possibility a potential reality. First, some basics. Tokenization, of course, promises to turn assets, claims and rights into programmable digital tokens. The vision of central banks is that the future of value and asset ownership should be regulated, programmable and interoperable. Thus, a tokenized system would integrate tokenized money, tokenized securities, tokenized contracts, and crucially, tokenized identity. Now, it sounds like dystopian hyperbole, yet when you actually examine the architecture and understand its true motives in helping to sustain the unsustainable, and that is the unsustainable fiscal imbalances, well, the direction of travel, to my eyes, becomes quite clear. The tokenization of people becomes a structural necessity of the model that seems to be being built. So tokenization is simply the creation of a programmable digital token which represents that asset or liability or claim. Unlike current financial databases where assets and liabilities are all recorded on separate and fragmented databases, tokenized assets are ledger native. This enables immediate settlement, continuous auditing and the embedding directly of smart contracts. Of course, there's various public and private sector tokenization projects underway which we have discussed many times, but briefly they include central bank money, commercial bank deposits, government bonds, equities and funds, as well as land titles, real estate claims and carbon credits, potentially also supply chain assets. Now, BlackRock's Larry Fink has recently stated that everything will be tokenized, and this is clearly the intention of the architecture. But tokenization is only half of that architecture. For once assets are tokenized, the system must also tokenize the owners of those assets. Tokenized money, whether in the form of central bank money, tokenized bank deposits or stablecoins, as well as tokenized government debt, are all programmable. The rules embedded within each token can carry restrictions, obligations, tax rules, as well as compliance conditions. And so if the assets are programmable, they require programmable participants as well. This is why they need machine-readable and interoperable digital ID. Otherwise, the system cannot assign ownership, enforce conditions, run compliance checks, automate transaction settlement, or apply behavioral rules. Therefore, what needs to be created is a digital twin, which is a tokenized representation of the person. That is really the gateway through which all tokenized assets, money, and their embedded programming is intended to flow. Your digital twin is not simply a static ID as we currently have. Rather, it has attributes, it has history, behavioral markers, permissions, as well as potentially governance logic. It becomes a complete living economic profile, for if they manage to implement their single unified ledger, it's designed to collapse identity and assets as well as obligations into a single continuous architecture. As money becomes tokenized, it means that incomes also become tokens. Wages, salaries, pensions, benefits and government transfers all then become programmable payments executed to your tokenized identity. That means that incomes become verified in real time. Taxes and deductions can take place at source. The history of our earnings becomes permanently stored upon the ledger. So creditworthiness can be continuously reviewed and updated, while behavioural patterns on income and spending face ongoing and automatic analysis. Today, digital records are maintained separately for almost all interactions, as we've discussed, whether it's via banks, employers, telecoms, utility providers, or tax authorities. But within the unified ledger, income is natively linked to the digital twin, which forms a continuous machine-readable profile of our economic life. Now, this is why the notion of stablecoins or tokenized deposits or central bank money is so significant. For once earnings become programmable, a tokenized person is no longer an optional layer. They actually then become the structural center through which the entire system operates, and why ultimately all of this depends upon digital ID. So the deeper implication here is that the convergence of digitization and extreme fiscal indebtedness means that a new form of collateral is actually being created, and that is our digital twins. Your income stream, your spending behaviours, liabilities, entitlements and level of compliance are all recordable and can be easily analysed via AI. All are effectively a new form of collateral, and is the predictability of our behaviours that can be priced, as well as the stability of incomes that can be risk modelled. Compliance can be continuously verified and assessed. Future actions can be statistically forecast like Minority Report, and access rights to credit can face dynamic adjustments. Collateral for any form of credit has always required predictability, whether it's property or whether it's future cash flows. The unified ledger offers predictability over individual behaviour and income, which can be adjusted really in real time. Thus our behaviours are then encoded through our digital twins, and they become a risk-bearing economic asset. To that end, it truly is the structural securitization of behaviour and income data. Tokenized people and their commensurate data profiles make them highly monetizable. Of course, central banks don't want to issue personal identity tokens themselves. They don't like to appear in the open. Far better for a system of intermediated identity via telecoms, payment service providers, private banks and the like. The intention is not to log in with a document, but instead a cryptographically signed KYC token issued by a regulated private entity. In this system, it seems private KYC providers then become ID gatekeepers, and the KYC tokens are intended to become the passport for our digital twins. Now, the vision is really quite explicit. Within a single architecture, which is designed so that for the first time in history, every asset, liability, cash flow, and behavioral data point can be observed in real time. It really promises a dystopian governance revolution that is simply not under discussion. It seems we're expected to become a ledger native being through our digital ID, which will record our entire balance sheet on their ledger. So you will be tokenized is not a warning, it is the design feature of this architecture of a fully tokenized financial world. Your digital twin will become both your passport and your collateral, and the core economic entity through which your entire financial life is governed. This is sadly the infrastructural logic. Self-custodied identity is the only true, meaningful protection against the state and its corporate enablers. This is where you would hold your own ID credential in a similar manner to how we keep our own passports ourselves. That would mean no bank or company or government can disable or revoke it. But that is not what is being built. But the good news really is that there is still plenty of time to ensure that we continue to gradually reduce our dependence upon the system. And this is easier than most people think. So for instance, the most powerful change you can actually make in your everyday lives is simply to choose more wisely about how and where you spend your money. It's the most powerful vote we can make, and it really does go a long way to actually buying into the future that we want to see. Now, I hope this has been insightful. Do make sure you understand the concept of the single unified ledger, and I'll put a link to that here. Thanks so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.